Let's talk a little bit today about why I feel that the Springfield XD Series pistol is probably the best defensive pistol out there for the general public. Now, I know it sounds opinionated, but I want you to understand that I form my opinions on weapon systems from the fact that they give me a tactical edge over my opponents. So I don't choose these guns because someone's offering me money to talk about them. I choose the Springfield XD Series pistol because as I have looked at all the different pistols that have come out over the last 30 years, I feel that the options that come with this pistol, along with the fact that they're reliable, are the best pistol on the market defensively, and I'm going to touch on some points with that. So remember, some of these things may seem biased, but like I said, I do have a biased opinion, like everybody does, but I form my opinions off of the facts, not because somebody told me something or I think something. Now, I've been carrying Springfield XD pistols for about 16 or 17 years. The number one thing I want to touch on is caliber. Now, people talk different calibers. When we talk semi-automatic pistols, we talk from a 380 to a 9mm to a 40 to a 45. Now, I have carried 9mm guns for over 30 years, and I believe that the 9mm is hands down the best caliber. I know there's people that aren't going to agree with that, but let me tell you why. The fact is this: the 9mm moves quicker, and because the round moves quicker, it offers greater penetration and more expansion of the round. So when a round hits something, the round expands, especially a hollow point. So when a hollow point round from a 9mm strikes something, it expands big. It also allows the gun to have a higher capacity because of smaller bullets. And I can tell you this: the size of the round doesn't make the difference in a crucial shot to incapacitate, right? We're talking defensive. So defensively, whether it's an animal or a human being, incapacitating shots that stop those attackers really don't matter on the size of the round. It matters on shot placement. So a lung shot, a heart shot, a round that goes into the cranium and disturbs the brain and stops somebody, it's the bullet and it's not the bullet size. If you hit the wrong spot, meaning somewhere that's not vital, it doesn't matter what caliber size it is. So now you talk about hitting the right spot. Isn't it more important to have more bullets? And isn't it important to have more penetration? Some people will talk about too much penetration, but I'm going to tell you this: in shootings, especially defensive, sometimes people wear things, heavier clothing, or jump behind things, and more penetration is going to be important to you. In my mind, more expansion, greater penetration. It also offers lower recoil. Lower recoil means that you're going to be more comfortable shooting it, and more shooters are going to be comfortable shooting that round. And also lower recoil means less muzzle rise, which means you're going to get back onto your sights quicker for quicker acquisition and to place more rounds downrange if you have to. When you look at the facts of that, on top of that, the FBI, who pulled away from the 9mm about 10 years ago, did a huge study, went through different types of calibers, and came back a couple years ago and said, hands down, the 9mm, because of the things I said, is the best defensive round. That's my opinion. I think that people should shoot the 9mm when it comes down to the best caliber for defense. Now let's look at these 5 pistols that I have here. These are all XD Series pistols, all from Springfield Armory. Again, my opinion based on these pistols has nothing to do with Springfield Armory. I'm not affiliated with them. They're not paying me. It's my opinion that these are great firearms for defense. Now, all pistols, at least, well, I shouldn't say all. Most semi-auto pistols come with some basic things that are very important. Number one is a lower Picatinny rail, which is you can see on the bottom of some of these. And those allow flashlights to be placed on those pistols. That is something that I think you should always have now when you go to a polymer handgun. Secondly, all defensive pistols should have night sights. Those are glow-in-the-dark sights. All of these guns have these with the exception of this new XDS. But those are imperative for sight acquisition in the dark. If you're engaging somebody in the dark and you don't have a flashlight, or sometimes you may have a flashlight but you choose not to use one, night sights are a lifesaver. And those you can acquire for about $200. Something else I want to touch on too is a great trigger. If you have a slow, draggy, hangy up trigger that's around 8 pounds, I say you should get at least a 4-pound trigger. Now what I like about Springfield Armory is if you buy one of their pistols without night sights, you can send them back to Springfield Armory. I believe it's called a carry package, and they'll give you a sweet, crisp 4-pound trigger and a set of night sights that you choose to put on the pistol. I think that's a great deal, and it's imperative to be a great shooter. Now let's talk the difference between other polymer pistols and the XDs that I think make the XD a better pistol. Number one is an ergonomic grip. As you look at the grips of these pistols, they kind of roll in a little bit. And what that does is when you're aiming with the gun, when your hand is flat, the gun aims flat. There are other pistols out there that don't have such an ergonomic grip, and the gun will be aimed upwards when you're flat, making you have to cant your hand downward. Now that may seem like a small thing, but remember that every little thing matters in reference to tactics and gunfighting. So I like the ergonomic grip of the XD. Let's talk about the grip safety. Now some people say that it's not a good system, but let's face it, the grip safety, which is on the back of all these pistols, some of them you can't see because the slide is moved back, came in place with the 1911 pistol in 1911. It's been working for over 100 years, and I think they're great. And what does the grip safety do? It's an external safety, but I don't like the average external safety on a pistol. And why is that? Unfortunately, the less somebody trains, the more likely they are to forget to turn that safety off in case of a defensive situation. And believe me, if somebody's attacking you and you forget to push the safety off and you start squeezing the trigger and the gun doesn't fire, in that panicked state, because you don't train a lot, you're not going to remember to turn the safety off, and that assailant's going to be on top of you. So if you look at any of these pistols with these grip safeties, the bottom line is that all you have to do is grip the gun. If you grip the gun, the safety is now disengaged and the gun will fire. And then easily you can lift your hand and hold the back of the slide and the safety is on. Grip the gun, the safety is off, the gun will always fire. I think that's very important for a defensive pistol. On top of that, this grip safety also doesn't allow for the slide to go back any further than that. So if you think of that, if you're holstering this gun into a tight holster or if you push it into your pants, there are other guns, if they don't have a safety that locks that slide, if I push this into a holster now, it could displace a round, which could cause a jam, and that's a problem. But the grip safety on the XDs prevent that from happening. So into a tight holster or into pants, that's a great system. On top of that, when I holster my XD, I immediately put my hand on the back of the slide. And what does that do? It turns the safety on. So if you push this into your pants or into a holster, especially if you're an appendix carrier, if you trust in a gun that has absolutely no safety with the exception of a trigger safety, that's a potential loss of a testicle or an arterial bleed. Let me tell you right now, that's not something that I would trust my life with. Now, I carried a Beretta 92 for the first 14 years of my police career, and I only switched from that gun to these guns when they came out. Now, Glocks came out before these, but because of the lack of safety, and I constantly put my gun in my pants when I was a policeman, there's no way I would trust my life to that. But with a double action gun and a hammered gun, what I found myself doing was cocking the hammer because I wanted a single action first shot. The Springfield Armory provides that, of course, but the grip safety also keeps you safe. The XD also, in all of their pistols, has an ambidextrous magazine release. So on either side of the pistol, whether you're right or left-handed, it will work. And if you have to go to a weak hand, it will work just like the strong hand does. Let's talk about round capacity. Now, my understanding is right now the XEM is the highest round capacity standard magazine semi-automatic pistol out there. That's 19 plus 1, 20 rounds of ammunition in this single handgun. That's a great thing in a defensive situation. These other guns, this is a subcompact which can hold 10 for a lower capacity but smaller concealed carry package, or it can hold the full size which now can carry 16 rounds. Now another option that comes on the XD series pistols, all of them a little different for the XDS, is that they have what they call a cocking indicator and a load indicator. The cocking indicator is a little button in the back. When the slide has been worked, that will stick out. And I can tell you, even with a shirt between it, you can feel down with your thumb or any finger and feel that. That will let you know that the gun is in a cocked condition. Now on top of the slide is a load indicator. Here it's flat. If you were to run your hand across this, you feel nothing. But if a round is loaded into the chamber, this sticks up, and I'm telling you, it is a positive indicator with your finger. It's sharp, not sharp enough to hurt you, but you'll know that that gun is loaded. Now that's an important thing, especially if you keep your gun like we do around the house with nothing in the chamber and a full magazine. Since the birth of our beautiful son, we decided that's the way we were going to carry out of the holster. So for us, if we have a gun in the holster, it is fully loaded, including one in the chamber. If it's out, thus it's lying somewhere in the house or in a holster inside of our vehicle, there is no bullet in the chamber, but there's a full magazine. So in the darkness of the night, if you hear something, you can grab this gun and you can feel if the gun is loaded and if it's cocked. Now there's something called a press check. Most people who train a lot with firearms know what that is, and that's where you can grab the front of the slide and move it back slightly and see if there's a round in the chamber. Unfortunately, in the dark, that doesn't work at all. You can't look and see if there's a round in there if it's too dark, and especially if you're waking up from a sound sleep. So you can grab this firearm and feel and know if you have to charge it or if it's already ready. Same thing with walking around out in the street. If this gun were inadvertently placed into a holster and you constantly keep this gun like we do, when there's no round in the chamber, we make sure that that gun is uncocked. If you were to put this into your holster and you're walking around on the street and something looked a little odd, you could feel with your finger and you could find out, oh my gosh, my gun is not charged. That's an incredibly important thing, as opposed to not knowing and then needing it and finding out the flat second you pull that trigger, the gun doesn't fire. So this load indicator and this cocking indicator to me is a big seller for the XD pistol series. So let's go over the XD series pistol and all the things I like about it. Now of course I touched on the 9mm. If you want other calibers that are available, I would suggest you stick with a 9mm. The grip safety, big deal. It prevents the slide from being engaged accidentally. It also keeps the gun from firing if the trigger gets snagged, as long as your hand isn't on here, which I showed how to do that. But it doesn't leave an external safety for you to forget to flick off in an emergency situation. Ambidextrous magazine release works for right and left-handed shooters or for anybody that's injured and has to use their off hand. Load indicator and cocking indicator, big deal for the XD pistols. I'm going to tell you this, there are some that offer that. They don't feel anything like the Springfield Armory does. Very easy to locate, very important in the dark, and it's going to reassure you. The ergonomic grip, which is going to allow you to have a natural grip, and that gun's going to be pointed forward as opposed to an upward cant, which you'll find with some of the popular guns. Also, the capacity for the 9mm. 19 plus 1 for this XDM, 16 plus 1 for the standard guns. Also the subcompact, you can get a 16 plus 1 or a 10 rounder. This XDS and all the things I talked about, there's two things I should touch on with this that are different. The XDS does have the great load indicator on the top, but it does not have a cocked indicator on the back. Also, when you're not engaged in the grip safety, the XDS still can be pushed out of battery. So remember those things if you decided to choose one of these handguns. Of course, this is for somebody that really wants the extra thin gun and smaller, which limits the capacity of ammunition. One thing I want to touch on that I think is interesting, I myself, I carry for the fight, but if you look at these two guns, this is a subcompact, and this is an XDS. These guns are almost exactly the same size, with the exception of this is wider. So if you think of that, you're going to get more rounds in this gun for a little bit more weight and a little more width. This is 10 plus 1, but you can also put a little bit of a longer magazine in there, and you're going to have 16 plus 1 in a gun that's just a little bit heavier and a little bit bigger. To me, that's a no-brainer. But everybody has a different idea of what they want to do, and as long as you carry the gun all the time, that's more important. So that's my thought process on the XD Series pistol. I hope it helps you to make a wise decision. Keep safe.